Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning from Oregon. We're going to take a couple of minutes as people are coming in. All right. Good to see your face, Anne. Hello. Hope everybody is doing wonderfully. I am Lisa Field with the Nomadic Network. Uh, you may have seen me around. Let's see, let me get over here. All right. All right. Um, as I said, I'm Lisa Field. I'm with the Nomadic Network. I'm the owner, and I am so happy to have you guys today. I want to give everybody just another minute to find the Zoom link, enter our virtual event. Um, Looks like everybody's coming in. Oh, got another one. All right, I think we're good. Um, we are so excited to have a phenomenal guest speaker with us today. You may be familiar with his work. He's here just a second. Let me pull up all his information because I want you to know everything. There we go. All right. So today we are talking about Mexico City. Um, we are exploring how to travel and uplift local families and preserve cultural traditions. We are thrilled today to be joined by Dylan Dornfeld. He is very familiar with the area, with entire Latin America, and he will actually get into that in just a moment. And he has spent years living and studying across Latin America, bringing incredible insight, heart, and expertise to this conversation. So, um, without further ado, I've got Dylan. Dylan is going to go ahead and take over.
Hello, hello, hello.
You
Thank you
got
so
it.
much, Lisa, for that
You're
lovely
welcome.
introduction. Thank you, thank you. Bom dia from Brazil, everyone. I'm coming in live from Rio de Janeiro. I'm going to be guiding a trip here in Brazil shortly, so I'm super excited about that. And we're going to go over a little bit of the ways in which we like to approach travel in Mexico City with the Nomadic Network. Before that, I just want to add a little bit to what Lisa was saying. My name's Dylan. I have been living and learning in Latin America now for 12, 13 years. Actually, I'm a graduate of University of Oregon, which Lisa and I were just talking about. And after graduating, I moved out to Argentina. And in that whole so in the flow of life, I started kind of teaching English. Then I moved to Nicaragua, backpacked up through South America solo, which was incredible, learning a lot about different cultures throughout South America. Went over to Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and then ended up working at NGOs in Nicaragua for about a year and a half, working primarily in social work, and then ended up in Mexico. Now, Mexico has been my home for the past 8 years. So I'm very familiar with Mexico. Mexico is an incredible, incredible place that has taught me so much and formed my upbringing in life. And I'm super excited to present the little bit that I've learned, at least some parts that I've learned, and also the ways that we approach conducting tourism in this area. So I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know. I think you should be able to see it. Lisa, can we see this? I hope so.
Yes,
So you can
sir.
see? Amazing. Also, if I pop out at all, the internet here in Brazil is a little shaky, but I think we're doing good right now. All right, so I'm going to pop over to our slideshow. Now we're going to talk about Ciudad de México el día de hoy. So today we're talking about Mexico City and also talking about a term that has now started to pop up in travel circles called regenerative travel. Now, I also wanted to add community here because a lot of what we're doing in Mexico City is deep, profound community immersion. Right. And I would add a little bit of family, community family. The people that we work with, we like to call our family. So, yeah. All right. Let's get it going. Here, I kind of want to start it off with just talking briefly about what is regenerative travel. I want to make sure that you're not seeing this here. Well, I think, are we seeing the full slide or are we seeing the video as well? We're seeing the full slide?
Slide. I can
Yeah.
see the
Okay.
slide.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay. Um, so I just want to talk a little briefly about what we consider regenerative travel to be. And as you are all probably aware, what we have now in, I would say, these socioeconomically and also ecologically conscious communities, we're talking a lot about sustainability. That's the term that we hear a lot, the terms that we see when we go to the supermarket, the terms that we see when we walk down the street and see an ad. Green is what's cool now. Now, what we're trying to do by shifting the conversation from sustainability to regenerative is really start to hone in on how are we making communities better. Let's try to not sustain the current reality, but also make sure that our travel experiences are actively making the communities that we work in better. So when we hear regenerative travel, we're also talking a lot about rural, communal, ecotourism. Those are kind of the terms that we throw out when we're talking about regenerative travel. So here, I'm going to move on. We define regenerative as the profound relationships that we make with local communities. And I know the Nomadic Network also does this in many different parts of the world. But essentially, what we're trying to do is make sure that the people that we work with are not simply service providers. These are deep relationships that we've created and connections that we've made over many, many years. So in Mexico City, we work with many people, and collaborators is the way that we like to refer to these people. And we have deep, profound relationships with them and their families. And one of the important things that we like to do when we approach travel is make sure that we have immersive and family style experiences. How are we in our travel experiences deviating from the massive tourist experiences and making sure that we're spending some time to really get to know the local culture? Now, one thing I will mention here, for example, here in Brazil, yes, we go to Christ the Redeemer, right? But what I'm saying is, we don't want to lose the emblematic. I want you to be able to also see the emblematic experiences in a country. But we're going to shift after those emblematic experiences. Let's get down to immersive family style experiences, right? And you'll see in our itinerary in Mexico City, we have a ton of these sprinkled in. So more local, immersive family style. Now, also, we want to make sure that our experiences are contributing positively to the environmental restoration of a space. And again, this is where we start to deviate a little bit from sustainability, and we try to select collaborators in areas that are actively improving the ecology of their spaces, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that in our immersive Chinampa experience that I will be introducing to y'all today. And another part of regenerative travel, which is important and also hard to measure, I will admit, is if our trips are actively improving the health and well-being of a community. Now, the way that we look at that is, all right, we come into a community, we provide economic resources, which are incredibly important, as you are all aware. But where are these economic resources getting invested? Are we creating spaces where people are just buying more junk food, or are we actively also as a culture promoting uh, health and well-being in the communities that we work in? So I will say regenerative travel is a challenge. We're trying to get there. It's an active process. It's not something that is finite, that is super measurable, it's something that we continue to work on, and it is the goal that we strive for. So that's kind of just a general parameter of what we're trying to do in our experiences with the Nomadic Network in Mexico City. Now, here I have our experience in Mexico City. So we're going to get into a little bit of the nitty gritty of how we are trying to approach this. Now, one of the other things that I just wanted to mention briefly, this is the mural in the Palacio Nacional, which was painted by Diego Rivera. Now, as you can see, I've specifically taken out a part of this experience, which highlights the indigenous peoples. So the indigenous history. And one thing that I will mention as well in regenerative travel, we try to focus on ancestral practices. So when I say ancestral practices, what are the indigenous peoples in these communities doing? How are they rescuing traditional agriculture? How are they promoting it in their communities? And I think one of the important things about regenerative travel as well is making sure that we are placing indigenous peoples, in the case of Brazil here as well, Afro-Brazilians, right? I know I'm mentioning a little bit of Brazil just because I have it in my mind, but we're trying to put indigenous leaders, community leaders in positions to share their culture. And also, one of the amazing things about regenerative travel is this brings a tremendous amount of pride in their culture, right? So that when people share about their culture, they become proud of it. And I think this is where it kind of gets interesting because we're starting to break down certain colonial narratives of, oh, everything's amazing in Europe. Everything's amazing in the United States. No, let's look at what we have here. And it's also incredible what is here, right? And that plays a lot into traditional agriculture as well, that I'll talk a little bit about right now. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit into some of the nitty gritty about experiences on our itinerary, right? And this is important because if you end up coming on the trip, which I hope you all do, these are some of the things that we are going to be getting into. So, for example, here on the left, we have Carlos. Now, Carlos is holding native corn. Now, remember, corn was domesticated in Mexico, and the rough estimates are 10,000 years ago. So, corn is a cornerstone of not only Mexican cuisine, but Mexican life in general. There are ceremonies throughout the year that honor corn. The indigenous peoples, all of the indigenous peoples throughout Mexico had a god of corn, a god of the harvest. In the case of Mexico City and the Nahua Mexica people, this god is Centeotl, right? So incredibly important. Now we visit the Chinampas en Movimiento. Now, Carlos is one of the real, I would say, forebears or somebody who is protecting traditional agricultural techniques. Now, for those who don't know what a chinampa is, much of Mexico City, and Mexico City during the Aztec times was called Tenochtitlan. Now, Tenochtitlan was essentially run on a lake, a big lagoon. So it was a lot of archaeologists, anthropologists drew comparisons to like a Venice, right? So people would move about the city in trajineras, little canoes, and they would use this long stick to push the bottom of the lagoon and move about the city in that way, which is what you will see in Xochimilco, which is where we have this experience. Now, chinampas are an old ancestral agricultural technique. So, obviously, Mexico City now, after the colonization by the Spanish, and all of this has been filled with cement, and we've built a massive city on this plot of land, right? But in Xochimilco, there's still parts of the old Lake Texcoco. Now, the chinampas are essentially massive mounds of mud where milpa is grown. Now, milpa is the three sisters agricultural system. You also have that present in Native American cultures in the United States. The three sisters being beans, squash, and corn, right? So one of the things that we love to do in our experiences is highlight traditional agricultural techniques, have some time with Chinampas en Movimiento. You're going to meet Carlos. You're also going to meet Chef Adela, who's going to be making our food. And what we like to do here is have an experience where travelers actually get to harvest what they eat, right? So we'll be getting a little dirty. We'll be able to harvest what we are going to be able to eat. And also, Carlos is going to explain a little bit of this traditional agricultural system and the importance of preserving this agricultural system. In the case of agriculture in Mexico, just briefly, what we have since NAFTA in 1992 is a lot of subsidized US corn, which is primarily GMO, flooding the Mexican market. So, in all of our experiences, we like to really highlight people who are dedicated to preserving native, organic, and locally sourced corn, right? Super important. So we get to harvest what we eat, and then we're going to have a collective cooking experience. Now, I say this because also regenerative travel, we like to get our hands dirty a little bit. We like to get immersive, right? We like to participate a little bit in the cooking experience. You're going to be able to ask Chef Adela all of these amazing questions about self, her life, and this is a family-owned business, right? So another important part, we're focused on locally and family-owned businesses, small businesses, right? So the Chinampas is an incredible experience that really highlights how Mexico City is not just a massive dynamic city. It certainly is, but we like to get off the beaten path a little bit, right? Especially with Nomadic Network, we like to get off a little bit so that you can see the real ways that people live, right? And at that point as well, also support incredible projects like Chinampas en Movimiento. Now, I added at the bottom here, Muévete en Bici. Now, Muévete en Bici is in Spanish, move on your bike. Now, this is another super important local experience that we have, right? So we hop on bikes, we go around the city. Now, Bogota actually was the city that Bogota, Colombia, started this trend, but every single Sunday, Mexico City closes Avenida Reforma, which is the main avenue going through the city center, and it's closed for people who are running, for people who will walk with their families. You know, you can maybe get a bite to eat out there, but it's a super local experience. So I like to grab some bikes and bike around a little bit. You're going to get to see the Monumento de la Revolución, the Ángel de Independencia. You're going to get to see a lot of these really emblematic landmarks in Mexico City, but you get to kind of experience it the way that a local would. And again, you'll see many locals out at this experience. So a ton of Mexicanos who are just going through their city and enjoying the city, right? Also kind of contributing more to an ecological approach because we're not using cars to go all around. So get a little time on the bike. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about why we're approaching our tours as well in this way. And one of those is slight issues that we've seen appearing in Mexico City with regards to gentrification. Now, I have certain opinions about gentrification. I think there are ways that people can inhabit territories respectfully, and there are ways that kind of inflame certain contrasts or differences. Now, you are all aware that we live in a very polarized time. There's not just political polarization in the States, or it's all over the world. So we have certain dynamics that we're dealing with. And the way that we like to confront this is running tremendous, regenerative, sustainable, awesome experiences that allow people to really connect with local culture. Also, one of the things that I would say is that as we continue to become more global citizens, we're able to move about the world in a more conscious way, which I think is incredibly important, right? But just to mention a couple of the things that have happened in Mexico City, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, but really since the pandemic and the whole how would I say it, the whole like kind of working online trend has started, is that we've seen a lot of rising in cost of living. Now, especially I would say in the Roma Norte neighborhood, Condesa neighborhood, and then also in Polanco, which are the three really kind of hip and bougie neighborhoods that are in Mexico City. So we've seen rises in cost of living, and that's something certainly that's been difficult for some locals who are living in these areas that kind of been priced out of their neighborhood. We've also seen a type of homogenization that's been occurring. So we see the same sourdough bread spots, the same cafe de especialidad spots, and we're seeing neighborhoods and barrios kind of shift, right? And it's shifting to basically accommodate people who are staying in Airbnbs around the area, right? Or people that are popping in from New York and living in Mexico City. Now, I want to just be clear, I'm not against anybody living in different spots in the world, right? But I think there is a certain responsibility. If we're going to live in Mexico, how do we do it responsibly? And how do we make sure that we're supporting local businesses and small businesses in our trajectory and in our time in Mexico City? So this has contributed certainly to a little bit of economic displacement, right? And there has been a strain on local infrastructure. So we're looking at these dynamics, and I'm always curious on how can we use travel to make sure that we're connecting people, and in a certain respect as well, trying to give a good name, like be good travelers, be travelers who are really promoting culture and being conscious as we move about the world, right? So I think another prominent part about that is learning little tidbits of language, right? Saying buenos dias instead of good morning. It's okay if you're not fluent in Spanish. No one expects you to be. But little details like that of being able to acknowledge and show that you respect the culture by learning certain phrases go a really long way, right? And I would just throw in here, in terms of gentrification that we've seen, the government has started to explore rent control, which is super important. I think the government has a lot of responsibility in seeing how we're going to control these Airbnb bubbles that are popping up everywhere. So yeah, that's a little bit about gentrification and why we're trying to approach Mexico in a regenerative way. Now, here I want to say how we live Mexico City. Now, when we are curating experiences, we look at a bunch of different things. One of the really important things that we look at, one of the elements that is super important in any itinerary, is that we are working with locally owned accommodations. So we're going to be staying in an amazing spot called Casa Nuevo León. Super nice spot, small, in the Condesa neighborhood, so it's really close to everything. It's walkable, it's beautiful, but we are staying in a locally owned hotel. There are certain other kind of massive touristy destinations in Mexico, which have unfortunately kind of lived this phenomenon where foreigners are the ones who own all the hotels, and Mexicans end up being the workers, right? So we like to support as much as possible locally owned businesses. So in that, I have my bullet point here with supporting community owned, locally owned, but making sure that we're supporting local businesses where we go. And we're deviating our economic resources into projects that we believe in, right? One of those projects here is also Meroma, which is an incredible restaurant. Now, one of the things about Meroma, similar to the Chinampa project, is that we're highlighting seasonal ingredients. We're looking at the seasonality of food, right? So this is not a place that's going to be sourcing their food from different GMO providers and ingredients that have been shipped over from the Philippines. We're working with restaurants that are also being ecologically conscious in the ways that they are creating their menus, right? So Meroma, we're going to be having a meal out there. It's incredible. You can taste how fresh everything is, and it's really just an incredible spot. So we try as much as possible to work with restaurants that highlight seasonality and also have sustainable and organically produced agriculture or ingredients, right? Now, one of the other elements of this, which is super important, is our experience out in Teotihuacan. Now, Teotihuacan, for those who are not aware, is some of the largest pyramid complexes in the Americas. The Pirámide del Sol is the largest pyramid in the Americas, and it is one of the most important archaeological sites in Mexico. It's always hard to gauge really well. Oh, is it Chichen Itza? Is it Teotihuacan? Teotihuacan was a massive urban complex. And I've read estimates that it was one of the most populous cities in the world at its peak, which was around 600 AD. So one of the most populous cities in the world that had different neighborhoods from all different cultures in Mexico. It had the Zapotec neighborhood, the Mixtec neighborhood, the Mije neighborhood. So this was a real indigenous Mesoamerican metropolis. And the way that we like to approach our experiences in Teotihuacan is we have incredible local guides, Hugo and Gabo. Now, Hugo and Gabo are both from Teotihuacan, which is super important, right? They are presenting their ancestral culture. And one of the things about Ugo and Gabo that make them so special, we have our experience at the Teotihuacan pyramids. We learn about the history. They're accredited guides with so much knowledge. And then we head over to their home. Now, their home is where we try a mole recipe that has been passed down for 5 generations. So their grandmother was the matriarch that continues to pass down this traditional recipe. It's going to be some of the best mole you've ever had in your life, if not the best. I can guarantee that. So this is what we're about. We're about highlighting how traditions are passed down through families. And Hugo and Gabo, it's an incredibly intimate experience that most people that go to Teotihuacan do not get to live, right? So I think this is really where we start distinguishing our experiences from people just going to Mexico City, right? And these types of activities and events you really only get if you have those deep connections within the community, right? So I think that's super important to highlight. Now, the Ballet Folclórico by Amelia Hernandez is some people look at, oh, the Ballet Folclórico, it's super touristy or whatever. No. Okay. So it is a space where a lot of travelers go. I'm not going to deny that. But what I will say is that we believe that folklore dance is a way of preserving culture. When you go to this folklore ballet, you can perceive how much cultural pride is present. And people are so incredibly proud to have worked their entire lives to be sharing dances from all over Mexico. So you have Son Jarocho, which is from Veracruz. You have dances from Jalisco, right? Out from the Guadalajara, Jalisco area. And you have this different dress that's associated with each dance. It's really a spot where people are preserving their culture and have such tremendous pride in sharing that. It's really palpable. I don't want to get too cheesy with you, but like when I went, I was like crying. I was like, oh my God, I love Mexico so much. So I would just share that fact as well. It's incredible and super special. The music is incredible. So this is something that we're really excited to share with y'all and with the Nomadic Network. It's a really, really, really special experience. All right. Again, kind of concluding now, the way that I like to look at travel is a vehicle for positive change all over the world, right? And as much as we can distribute our resources in a way that feels good, in a way that's regenerative, in a way that's helping families, that's helping locally owned businesses, that's what we want to do, right? So in that, we have the economic side, obviously. And then we have the real engaging in cultural exchange, right? Which I imagine y'all are travelers. You've experienced this when you have that moment that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. That moment where there was a spark and there was real cultural exchange. It was authentic. It was beautiful. That's what we live for. That's what we're trying to curate all the time, and that's what we're trying to bring to our experiences in Mexico City, is making sure that you get a chance to really perceive what we determine as the essence of Mexico City. And I highlighted some of the experiences, not all, but some of the experiences that we're going to be living out in Mexico City. And again, this idea of like, how can we try to have experiences that really benefit the health and well-being of the communities that we're working in, right? And I think that comes from deep friendship. I think that comes from sharing conscious approaches to living, right? How can we make sure that we're creating healthy and balanced communities through our travel, right? It's a great challenge. And I would not say that we always get it done, but it's a challenge that we are working on actively in the regenerative travel space, right? And then again, like I mentioned, really making sure that we're helping out locally owned initiatives, right? Cooperatives, people that are dedicated to doing important things in their territory and really helping to replenish their territories, right? I think it's super important. And then just as kind of a last point, our Mexico City experiences really kind of have this deep respect for ancestral traditions. In Mexico, especially in indigenous cultures in Mexico, you'll see how traditions continue to be passed on through generations. And it's super impactful when you see grandma, mom, daughter passing down traditions. It could be through textiles, it could be through ceramics, it could be through agriculture, but you see how how traditions are passed down, and it's super important. How do these traditions continue, right? And how do we make sure that we are aware of how important they are in the world, right? So bringing value to that, learning, asking engaging questions, and really just soaking in that culture, because it might not always be as prominent in the States. I mean, I know there's certainly multi-generational traditions in the States, but in Mexico, you really, really feel it, and you can feel the importance behind it. People are very emotionally and physically connected to their culture, right? Um, all right. Muchas gracias y nos vemos en Mexico, which means I'll see you in Mexico. And these are some of the trajineras. This is where we'll be traveling on Lake Texcoco. These are the ancient trajinera boats that the Aztecs would use. And that's what I got. So I'm going to stop sharing and let me know, Lisa. I don't know if we want to open up to Q&A. Gracias, gracias. Muchas
Yes.
gracias, gente.
Dylan, that was amazing. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. I do have some questions for you.
Lovely. Yeah.
All right. So, if travelers are planning a trip on their own, do you have websites or guidebooks that you would recommend to find immersive tours?
Yes, I do, but that would be something that I would be able to, like, if you wrote me. I don't know. I don't know if my Instagram was able to be shared with the crew, because I know I kind of put it in a little bit later. But essentially, if you wrote me, I could connect you with people in Mexico City that are doing incredible immersive experiences, and that are kind of more in line with this style of travel, right? So I would say, if anybody is interested in also going to Mexico City as well on their own, please consider me an ally in that. And yeah, I can totally pass over some experiences for people to check out when they're in Mexico City.
Okay,
No
that's great.
question. Yeah,
Um, if
yeah.
somebody had one day in Mexico City, what would you say they need to hit?
So, ooh, God, what a good question. Okay. So for me, you got one day in Mexico City. I'm a total archaeology nerd. So I would say one of the things on that itinerary would be you have to go to the Anthropology Museum. Now, the Anthropology Museum is an incredible, incredible spot. On our Case Nomadic Network, we're going to be going out to Teotihuacan. You're going to be able to see the pyramids and feel it. But I would say Anthropology Museum, you have to go to the Centro Histórico, go to the Zócalo. The Zócalo is the base of everything that happens in Mexico City. You have the Palacio Nacional there as well. And then I would also say, even though it would be a little tricky with traffic, going out to the Museo Frida Kahlo as well. It's incredible. Now, I would add in that you have to eat tacos. Like, you have to eat tacos. So in that, there's a couple different taco spots that I personally love. One is called Atarantados. It's incredible. It's in Roma Norte. There's also Tacos Orinoco, which is great. Really, really delicious spots. And then I would say having a end of the night possible cocktail at Hanky Panky, which is one of my favorite little bars. Having a little cocktail, and then what else? And then I would say, just because I'm an avid salsa dancer, I would say salsa dancing at Mama Rumba. There you have your. I mean, that's a full day. But if you're not tired by the end of the day, salsa dancing at Mama Rumba for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, got it
That's
all.
great. Got it all.
Yeah.
Another question. How is the water in Mexico for drinking?
So water for Mexico and drinking, the way that we usually drink water here, it comes through garrafones, right? So the way that I usually do it with my travelers is that I get a big water jug. I mean, it's essentially filtered water that I get, and then it has a little pump. So the way that I usually ask travelers to try to limit our single-use plastic, we can totally drink out of the filtered water in Mexico City. Totally fine, right? So on our trips, we have a big garrafon, little pump. You can fill up, which is great. If you're feeling even a little, not loving that, you can get plastic bottled water. But I usually try to incentivize travelers to get a big one so that they can fill up their reusable water bottle. But Mexico City, no tap water, no tap water. It needs to come out of a garrafon, which is the big filtered jugs, like kind of like the Arrowhead jugs that we see in the States. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Another, you touched on this a little bit, but can you expand on how can travelers respectfully navigate neighborhoods that are facing these gentrification pressures if you're traveling on your own?
Right. So I think one of the main things that I've seen is, and I mentioned it a little bit, but linguistically approaching people with a buenos dias, buenas tardes, you'll be amazed at what that does. And I know that happens in other cultures as well, not just, Spanish, but just an acknowledgement of like, hey, buenos dias. And then you can start speaking English. It's okay if you're not fluent. But I think linguistically approaching people in their language helps break down a certain barrier, right? So I would say that that's a big one. See, as much as possible, trying to like pop into small businesses. There are a couple classic spots in Mexico City. I mean, classic restaurants, for example, there's Contramar, which is in Condesa, which is a classic seafood restaurant that everyone goes to. I really like digging in and trying to find hidden treasures, right? So I think, for example, Meroma is a hidden treasure which we have on our itinerary. There's a couple different spots. The way that, again, this is me because I'm a nerd about this stuff, but I really like looking at the Michelin. You guys know the Michelin star restaurants. They just came up with a Michelin green star, which is super interesting for anyone who just wants to like look at like what that means. But I know here in Sao Paulo, I was like looking at, okay, what does a green star mean? It's essentially when businesses are at the height of levels of practicing sustainability and seasonality in their ingredients. So I would also just, throw it out to travelers. Hey, check it out. Check out the Michelin Green. I know there's one specific restaurant that I'm thinking about in Mexico City, which is incredible. It's called Baldío, that has zero waste. So it's really interesting looking at, and we got to dig in a little bit. This is stuff that, you're not going to just hear about when you're walking around Mexico City. You got to kind of do the research of like, oh, what restaurants are doing these sustainability practices, right? But I really like that. And then just in general, I think the ways that we combat gentrification is just being good travelers. I know it sounds simple, but it's just being conscious, good people, saying thank you, being kind. Just in general, the way that we conduct ourselves might sound a little hippy dippy, but energetically throughout the world is really important. The way that we approach, and also making sure that you have that cultural orientation, right? So I think, also as those who provide tours, it is also our responsibility that you have that orientation of how to act in certain situations. Mexico is a really important, it's really important manners. In Cuba, not so much, but in Mexico, it's super important to say por favor, gracias, have this way of approaching that's mellow. People are very tranquil. Here in Rio, it's different. Everyone's yelling at each other, and it's not bad. It's just different. So I think also as those who put on these experiences, we will provide an orientation for the way that you interact, certain ways that you say hello. It's like a little touch of the hands. Hola, buenos dias. Those things go a long way for promoting this healthy cultural exchange.
Nice. Um, what are some misconceptions that visitors often have about Mexico City?
That everyone wears sombreros and drinks tequila. No. Uh, No, I mean, look, I think a lot of people also believe that Mexico City is super dangerous. Now, I will say it's a big city. So, as we know, big cities do require certain attentiveness. But Mexico City, especially where we are going, is really, really safe. It's not, and this is something that I get from a lot of travelers in general in Latin America. It's like, oh, is it safe? And you have certain ways that you approach walking around the city. But I would say, I mean, I'm originally from Los Angeles, and I would not say in any way, shape, or form that Mexico City is more dangerous than certain spots in LA. So I think the way that we move about the world, obviously you're not going to be wanting to like wear a bunch of jewelry and just like always in a crowded market have your phone out like this, but it's super super safe. Mexico City is a really really mellow spot. um One of the other things, I guess, a common misconception is that like Mexico is kind of all like Mexican food. Or Mexico City is the fourth largest city in the world, and you will be able to find a tremendous amount of cultural diversity. It is, especially now in the last 10, 15 years, really ascended to be kind of the New York City of Latin America. There's a ton of film production going on. It's incredibly dynamic. There's a massive fashion industry that, like, it's one of the main capitals of the world. So, that being said, the cultural diversity is immense. And that manifests also in the food. I mean, I could be here all day just telling you about different restaurants that you need to hit if you go. But there's one spot that I'm just thinking of that I want to mention just in line with the cultural diversity, called Maíz and Masala. Now, Maíz and Masala is a mix of Indian cuisine and Mexican cuisine. And you think, what? It is insane how delicious it is. So I think cultural diversity, it's safe, right? It's safe. And yeah, I would say those are the main ones that I would highlight as far as as far as misconceptions.
All right, that's great. I've got another question here.
Yeah,
In Mexico, bargaining is a common part of markets and artisan sales, but it also touches deeply on issues of cultural respect and fair compensation for people's work. How can we
right.
teach travelers to engage with bargaining in a way that honors tradition while ensuring artisans and workers receive the value they deserve? That's great.
Wow. Great question. Applause to whoever asked that question.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yo, so I like to approach with travelers where I go that it's kind of a no bargaining situation. Now, there are certain markets in Mexico City where it's almost part of the culture, right? There are markets not only in the world where it's like part of it, right? So you kind of like want to bar because it's part of this important cultural exchange. Now, the way that we like to do it is, in general, we go to the artisans. So I like, as much as possible, to minimize middlemen and middlewomen in purchasing artisanry. Now, I'm speaking about in general in trips that I curate in Latin America. So making sure that there are moments for immersion with artisans, right? So you're there and you're able to see the natural dyes occurring before you, and then being able to buy something there that, yes, it might be a little bit more expensive than you'd find in the Mercado de Tepito, but you have this important cultural exchange. You're seeing the piece of artisanry, be it ceramics or textile, being produced in front of you. and you also have something where you can take home, and if the artisan would like, you can have a picture with that person. Like, there's just a deeper cultural exchange. So I'm all about trying as much as possible to purchase directly from artisans. And to be honest, I don't know if I mentioned to y'all, but I live in Oaxaca, Mexico, which is a artisan capital, and just in general cultural capital of the country. So this is something that's extremely present. We have a lot of middlemen who have a nice boutique shop in the centro, bargaining down all of these artisans out in indigenous communities and then selling it at 4 times the rate, for a 300% profit. So that's something that is kind of near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I'm extremely sensitive to, because where I live, it occurs a lot. Now, I will say we try our best to make sure that you go to the artisan. When you go to the artisan, sorry, y'all, the way that I usually say is no bargaining. Now, if the artisan ends up being like, they kind of see and they're like, oh, 120 pesos instead of 150. I think at that rate it's acceptable. But I do not let travelers bargain when I take them to an artisan. So that's the way that I approach it. It's super complex and it's destination dependent, but that's what I love to do. That's like the ideal situation.
Makes perfect sense. I love that
Yeah.
question. That was a great one.
Yeah. Amazing.
Um, one more question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Mexico City is such a huge city, and there are a lot of adorable, wonderful neighborhoods that are undiscovered. What
Right.
neighborhoods are usually overlooked that you would recommend going to?
Mm. It's good. So, one thing that I will say is a lot of people kind of stay in the Roma Condesa bubble, if you will.
Mhm.
And it's a beautiful bubble. I'm not gonna say it's beautiful. And it does resemble like New York and LA, One neighborhood that I particularly love is Coyoacan. Coyoacan is super quaint. It's charming. It has really, really beautiful spots. That's where the Frida and Diego, Frida Kahlo Casa Museum is. So it's not like super undiscovered, but I would say it's really, really nice. And a lot of people progressively have kind of been more just staying in the Roma Norte Condesa bubble. Um, I would also say, just in general, a museum that we're going to visit, which is an overlooked museum, which is not technically the neighborhood, but it's an event that we have on our experience, is going out to the Anahuacalli Museum. Now, Anahuacalli is basically Diego Rivera's private collection of Mesoamerican artifacts. So it's super incredible, right? He amassed over his life as a muralist and a painter and a prominent figure in Mexico City culture, tremendous amounts of Mesoamerican artifacts. So it's an incredible museum. I think y'all are going to absolutely love it. So that would be kind of more of an overlooked destination, I would say. But as far as neighborhoods go, I really love Coyoacan. And I think it has a lot more kind of off the beaten path little markets, which is where you get the real flavor. I mean, the restaurants in Mexico City are incredible, but also just like popping into a market and having, taquitos de barbacoa, or having a little caldito de verdura. It makes it super dynamic. Maybe some chile rellenos, pipián. I mean, there's just so much, and you can get a lot of that stuff also in the markets, right? Um, so yeah, let's say Coyoacan would be my neighborhood that everyone needs to check out, and some people don't.
Love it. Oh my gosh, you're making me hungry. I think I know what I'm
I
having for lunch
am too.
today. Thank you so much, Dylan. This has been
Yeah, of course.
amazing. Amazing.
Amazing. Good.
Oh my
Well, thank
gosh.
y'all so much
Thank
for the
you.
opportunity to share a little bit more about places that I love. So it's a privilege, and I hope to see y'all down in Mexico City. And sí, muchísimas gracias, Katy. And yeah, it's just a pleasure. Thank you so much,
I
Lisa.
love it. Thank you. And I've got a couple of things I need to cover at the end. And
Sweet.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And so say goodbye to Dylan Sweetface. And we'll stay on for a second.
Adios, nos vemos. I'll see y'all in Mexico City. Ahí está.
Yes.
Ciao, everyone. Bye bye.
All right, everybody here. So that was amazing. Regarding Mexico City, we have got, TNN has got two tours next year scheduled for Mexico City. As you may well know, if you're a fan of the Nomadic Network, we have a lot of longer tours, just logistically. It just makes more sense when you go somewhere to stay for a long time. And we've had a lot of feedback from folks saying, you know what? I don't have that much vacation time. I only have time to get away for a long weekend. So we have listened, and we've got Mexico City coming up twice next year, coordinated over long holiday weekends, U.S. holidays. So over President's Day weekend, and then also over Veterans Day weekend. So 4 nights and 5 days, and really just packing in so much goodness about Mexico City in one long weekend. So we've also added a discount code, Dylan, for 200 off. So that won't expire. That'll be good throughout the next year. So whenever you feel inspired to sign up for one of the tours, go ahead and use Dylan, and you'll get 200 off. And then we've also got other tours coming up in 2026. We've got, I believe, 8 tours. We've got India, Thailand, we've got Oaxaca, which Dylan was mentioning as well as several others. So go ahead and take a look, and you could start planning your 2026 calendar. We also have other upcoming free events. These are free. Anybody can join. We've got virtual happy hours once a month, which is so great to be able to just get on Zoom with 1 or 2 or 10 other happy travelers that really just want to talk about where they've been, where they want to go, and all things travel. And then we've actually got in real life pop-up coming up. We've got those on occasion, and we've got one coming up in Toronto at the beginning of October. So keep an eye out for upcoming events. We've got stuff coming up all the time with topics like we just covered today. And it's great to be able to provide that free resource for everybody. Also, follow us. Follow Dylan. I know that he put his Insta handle in the chat, but we will be recapping with that as well. But follow the Nomadic Network on Insta. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, register for our events, and of course, travel with us for our tours. And that's it for today. So thank you guys so very, very much for joining us and for getting to listen to all of Dylan's expertise. He is such a rock star, and we're so lucky to have him on the team. But thank you so much today, and hope you guys have a good one. Thank you all.